what you want, but you weak. And we was in the field manifesting all our dreams. And please don't try to play like you own when you weak.
Hello and welcome back to the Hemp sTalk podcast. My name is Vartan Simonian.
And I'm Joseph Fordyce, and welcome.
Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Knock on Hemp LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent.
This podcast is sponsored by Knock on Hemp, an industrial hemp processor located and licensed in New York State. Knock on Hemp works with farms and businesses to source and process hemp plants into innovative and reliable alternatives to things that we use in our daily lives. KOH produces dependable everyday products, resilient building materials, and sustainable energy solutions with the aim of delivering an affordable and efficient end product to our consumers.
Nice. So,
This is
how are you been? Episode 3, we're back once more.
I've been great, man. Been, maintaining,
Trying to stay
doing the best I
productive.
can. Yeah, absolutely. In a crazy time.
Right. Yeah,
Let's
well,
get to it.
a conversation that you and I have been having, a lot, and I'm sure that a lot of people around the world and different businesses are having, is that this is really kind of a time to reflect more than anything on your own personal life and like what's important to you, but it's also a time that we can all kind of slow down and take a step to really finish those things, those essential things that we need in our lives and in our businesses, and really kind of hash stuff out and make long-term plans and stuff. So as with the bad comes a little good. I know that we're organizing, and I know that a lot of other people with ideas and companies and businesses and concepts are taking the time to organize as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a trying time, but like we said, our hearts and minds are out to those families.
Right.
And so we're here to just continue the conversation really about hemp applications. We talk about the hemp plant in a lot of different ways for a lot of different reasons, but one of the applications that I think is honestly going to be in the next 10 years a boom is going to be in the building industry in particular, and focus on the insulation.
Well, so we've discussed every day so far. We talked about seeds for cosmetic and food products. We went into fabrics, and then we went from clothing to home curtains, bedding, and everything else. And so now we're getting into the larger piece of what it is that you need to survive, right? So your basic cosmetic uses, your basic clothing uses, your basic home uses, and now we're talking about building. So today's a building apps applications episode. All right. So let's do it. So what's the first thing we're going to talk about?
Yeah, insulation is definitely the main focus, because I think outside of trying to make structural things with hemp, non-structural insulation type applications, I think will be utilized long term. There's a lot of evidence for that. I've seen online companies really embracing insulation.
So explain insulation though, because we can't assume that everyone is building homes and kind of has that kind of knowledge. Especially both of us are in pretty urban environments, right?
Yep. So as an example, like to your point, I mean, we're talking about home insulation, building insulation, to prevent loss of heat, insulation to keep water from permeating inside of the home. This is what insulation is for. The thing right behind your walls. Usually it's pink. That insulation, it's kind of hazardous. Insulation is usually supposed to be fireproof, but it's not always. Most quality is not fireproof, so it's usually just the stuff in between the walls that keeps your house warm or keeps your house cool.
So So to relate that to what we were talking about last week, then, is that the kind of the basics of hemp textiles is that they can retain heat, they can provide um, cooling, right, like a natural cooling effect. And we talked about that from the bedding side. And we also talked about that in terms of curtains, letting light in, and things like that. And then even before that, in the previous episode, in the first episode, we talked about how hemp retains water. So kind of all the out of those the three or four things that I just said, it seems that those are all direct uh, needs for proper
Yeah,
insulation.
I mean, there's a bunch of benefits for the fiber, and the fiber benefits translate to the different areas that you can use hemp essentially. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're not, the only sources,
Okay.
in terms of, knowledge about this. There's plenty of resources like the hemp industry association in here in the US is has a lot of information about the different types of building materials that are created with hemp. Currently, in building construction, they have hemp lime, hempcrete in building envelope for thermal walls. We have hemp fiber bat for the insulation I was talking about. Hemp oil wood for wood finishes and deck stain. And there's hemp panels, board panels that can be used for insulation. I know several companies that are making that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's three forms of insulation. Just to first bring it back a little bit, three forms of insulation. Bat insulation, which is the sheets that are kind of compressed, but you can still kind of pull them apart. That's similar to how you normally see the pink stuff in that form. They're usually in the form of what's called bat sheets, like just compressed sheets put together. Um, so it's still fluffy, but it's something that'll fit in the spaces in between the walls, and kind of make sure there's no air in between. Um, we have and we have the next one is loose fill. So that one is where you would spray in using a tube and a commercial air pump, and it would just blow in all of the hemp hurd um, directly, loose, so that you're just kind of filling an area, and then while it sits there loose, it'll still be retaining heat, controlling the flow, and the cellulose is what's important when for those kind of fills, right? The next thing is there's panels, the blow-in insulation, and the instead of the bat sheets, there's more compressed board similar to plywood, oriented strand fiber board, OSB board. That board is the third form of insulation where it just acts as a thick barrier to the exterior and the interior, that can has a really good what people care about is our values in the wall, really kind of dictate how much um, resistance to heat the wall has, and different levels. Normally you'll see walls with um, you know our values are 46 and things like that, to understand how large the wall is, right? 46 inches, whatever it is. With the hemp, what's interesting, um, and is the fact that the R value for hemp is usually 30 to 50% better than most products out there. Most of the alternatives like fiberglass, when you're using for your other insulation, alternative for insulation, fiberglass, biggest alternative.
So, my question for that, right, is this. So, you already brought this up, and I think that we should kind of get a little bit deeper into this as well because we brought up previous episodes. But Hempcrete, right? So, when you're discussing insulation, where so Hempcrete is a lime and hemp hurd mixture that creates a concrete replacement and is used for building homes throughout Europe and has lots of insulation benefits as well as natural pesticide benefits, and kind of a long-term wear and tear and whatnot. And we will get further into that, but knowing that itself, the concrete replacement made by hemp, has insulating features. Where does the insulation come in, or is that for to replace insulation that currently exists in traditionally built homes?
It'd mainly be, to replace current insulation
Okay.
used. Because what's interesting about one of the pros to using hemp as an insulation instead of like fiberglass or wool or other some of the others,
Mhm.
is that cellulose, you really retain heat better than any other, and the water vapor goes in and out. It's
Mhm.
very breathable
Mhm.
material. So,
Which it is as
as
well with the concrete. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the insulation, the hempcrete, it's all connected so that um, the way that it's used, it just makes your house like a super house. You can really make, green homes, and that's what they've done in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and a lot of other places. As we're getting into the green home wave, that's just another thing that we need to, replace the way that we do things, the way that we build with. I mean, one thing that's unique about hemp is, you see we talked about it before, several, thousand companies that have started to grow and process or manufacture products with hemp. So the industry is ripe to have such a big supply demand chain, as building,
Well,
and building industry is very big.
exactly what. So I think that what we both have been just saying kind of relates so perfectly. There is that there are uh, methods and processes that can lead to replacing traditional things that we do already, like
Yeah,
insulation, in
it's
a more
it's it's a slow
efficient way.
process.
Well, I'm saying you can do it
Yeah.
in that way, in a more efficient way, replacing something in the houses that we already have. And then there's the other route, which is building something anew, right? Which is hemp fiber boards, Hempcrete, and all of these things kind of come pre-loaded with this insulation feature, kind of to revert back to the smart plant comment that I made the other week. So it's such a smart plant that you can we can build it from the ground up, and it'll have these
Hmm.
specific features, or we could just replace what we already have in place, and it will still benefit from like all of the list of positive attributes to using hemp as an alternative to traditional materials.
Right. A lot of businesses out there, I can definitely say, are in the forefront of the building industry,
Mm-hmm.
looking to, change the laws. We're seeing lobbying going for the hemp building industry in particular, through several patrons that, are in the business, and create products for, its, certification, all that kind of standardization. So as the products become standardized, the building industry would welcome it in different places as it is, and it'll keep growing. As you can see, I'm sure you could show a couple examples of some beautiful hemp homes that are done. You could go from the walls to the floor insulation. If you're filling the floor out, you can fill the floor out with hemp mixed in with concrete. This is what it's done. So you also improve the quality of the concrete, use less concrete, add in a better alternative to just having concrete. So, there's a couple ways to use hemp in an installation fashion. So it's really cool. I think um, what what's interesting now, as we're seeing the industry grow into, you know comparisons of fiber, comparisons of other interchangeable materials, we're looking at R value is 3.66 per. Hold on.
Well, stop. You keep saying R value, but I
Resistance
don't
to
even
heat.
know what that means. Okay.
When we talk about how effective hemp can be, um, it's as a cellulose insulation. Its R value can get up to 3.6 per inch, and a lot of content is not even reaching 3.
Wait, and that's for everyone for clarity. That's resistance to heat, correct?
Yep. I
Okay.
mean, fiberglass, you get 2.9 to 3.8, and that's
Mhm.
with all of the different additives and recycled content. You can get just in between there or below there. The only other thing I would say has a comparable value is rock wool. Um, and even with rock wool, it's not something that um, you want to, it's not something that you can see replacing even hemp, because hemp you can grow in 4 months, and the fiber is usually a byproduct of all of the other products. So
Well, I mean
to
that's
make.
the kicker for everything, though, right?
Mhm.
That's even why we're having this conversation right now. Is that the versatility kind of meeting? I'm not even sure what the correct term would be, but like how quickly it is that this can be reproduced and redone over and over is
Yeah,
just astonishing, right? And
yeah.
that's why we're having this conversation to begin with.
I mean, and let's take it back. Let's take it back a little bit.
All right.
We can look at some of the traditional and historical buildings and see that hemp mattered even back then, because I always like to look back in time and see where hemp was used, and then we really kind of understand why it's being brought out and used today, right? So
Mhm.
we look at, let's go to Rome. 6th century Rome. Did you know that hemp was used to construct a mortar bridge when France was still called Gaul?
Hmm.
And you know, they made
Wait, you said
a hemp
they made a what bridge?
a hemp mortar bridge, so basically a hempcrete
Mm.
mixture.
Okay. Mortar.
Mhm,
I didn't hear what you said.
mhm. And this
Um,
is the
hmm.
days of Julius Caesar.
Right.
So
Right.
it's, even back then, building as a building material, hemp was used. When you look at homes and historic buildings, there's a lot of historic buildings in Europe, in English heritage, that were ancient, considered ancient, and even now today they're able to do some repairs on these buildings because it's made of hemp. So hemp is still
And
biodegradable, and they can just redo it. A lot of people think that no, and that's good, because a lot of people think that hemp, it won't last for some reason. They're just like, why, they're questioning it, right? But I mean, when you learn about the concepts of, building homes with sand, and, the way that they create them, when you create things efficiently, they last. And hemp with lime is, a bond that can last centuries, because lime literally petrifies, gets harder over time, and when built, correctly,
I
it
really want
lasts.
to stop you there. Is that it does get harder and harder and harder over time, but maintains the breathability, I guess, or and as well as the insulation
That's
that
how it
it
gets hard. Yep.
provides. Yeah. So
So
that's really a key point that we should definitely stress.
So one of the reasons why, and this is why, as an insulation, as wall material, it is a superior material, is the ability to continue to extract toxins out of the air. This is something talked about lightly, but this is a huge. I think it's a huge fact that it still acts as like a filter, an in-home filter, and as well as an in-home um, air um, cooler. and humidifier. So what it would do is it draws in extra humidity, and at times of dry air releases humidity. So releases water into the air. So it literally, that's how it breathes, and then in that process it pulls in carbon, and that's how it gets harder. So it's literally saving, or not saving, but it may be a strong term, but it's increasing the air quality of your
Well,
home
long
to live.
term, there are savings involved, though, in terms of
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of savings.
your energy bill,
Your energy bill is,
maintenance
a
on
lot
your
of people.
home,
That's one of the biggest things
heating
whenever
and
you hear
cooling.
or see on YouTube, learn about someone that has a hemp home. That's one of the first things they always say is the benefit, their energy costs. They use way less energy than they even expected outside of what they
And like I said,
used to.
it's a smart plant. You know what I mean? Like we're in this age of everything's smart. We have smart cities and smart things and smart
Yeah,
appliances and
yeah,
smart, smartphones, smart. I don't even know anymore. Like there's just an endless list, right?
yeah. Everything's
But
the Internet of Things.
hemp is definitely is it's so versatile. It's so kind of forward thinking. You can save money. You can uh, save having to repurchase things. There's a quality to it that lasts and kind of gets better over time. So um, that's enough hemp compliments for now, right? I guess we can kind of move on to talking about some state legislation.
Coal, concrete, wood, plastic, textile, and replace them with resilient building materials, eco-conscious energy solutions, and responsible everyday consumer products. With the world in crisis, we're once again knocking at Hemp's door for help. At Knock on Hemp, we partner with businesses to provide an affordable alternative that is as sustainable and reliable as the plant itself. Like we always say, if you can knock on wood, you can knock on hemp.
Um, yeah, so aside from Texas, industrial hemp becomes legal in South Dakota as well after Governor Nome signs that in. I think they gave, is it $3.4 million to the hemp industry or industrial hemp program that they have going there. And this is an interesting one. Like we talked about last week, Mexico is moving forward with their legal hemp despite kind of the latest delays that they have in Congress about the marijuana end. And in Mexico, you always have to kind of worry about that third party that always has a say. So I'm sure that's not that's kind of holding that up there somewhere, right? Yeah. and then this is kind of an interesting one uh, for what we had discussed, kind of the definition between hemp and um, cannabis is that 0.03%, or no, I'm sorry, 0.3% THC is what makes cannabis versus hemp, right? So the agriculture ministry in Poland calls for 1.1% THC in hemp, right? So they are taking three times the measure here, like three times the size of what we would consider hemp in the U.S. That one's kind of crazy. I can't.
8% THC. Um, for that farmer, for that process, everyone in that situation, that's a huge loss. And these are the kind of investments that have been made into the industry to where people in Poland, may still want to use it for what we're talking about, which is building materials.
So they're obviously using it for CBD purposes as well. And
industrial purposes, even so.
So what I think is that what maybe the confusion for myself and a lot of other people is that industrial element actually incorporates both traditional industry and that medical side of things. So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Ghana, right? Is that they're pushing for medical and industrial cannabis, right? And that's what their angle is to this legalization.
But really, there's no, it's no difference. It's just about understanding that, as long as the plant doesn't have a certain amount of THC, you can't get high or psychoactively affected. And no, I mean, there's people who do, though. At the same time, though, there's people who, there's a lot, like, one of the things that this industry has opened me up to understanding is about the spectrum of people that need different things. There's varying degrees of hemp potency, CBD potencies in tinctures because of that reason. So there may be people who like a small buzz over an actual high. So that's why I say there's a little bit of both at play. But I think, like you're saying, though, the main reason the agriculture ministry in Poland did it, though, is for industrial purposes and making sure, and like I'm saying, I'm thinking they're looking to preserve crop whenever this happens. And that, because remember, the world has accepted this limit on 0.3. So
no,
that's
that's exactly what I was just about to say. So
yeah,
that is the kind of globally imposed thing since like the 90s or whatever.
Absolutely.
But that's so there are countries that are like Italy, for example, who can go as high as like 0.2. I'm sorry, 0.6. While in Europe, the EU in general, their rules are 0.2. So I'm really confused at how Italy is just like a part of the EU, but blatantly kind of going against that rule. But hemp producing countries like Uruguay, South Africa, Malawi, Thailand, all of those are all allow a full 1% THC levels.
That makes sense.
And
that makes sense because it'll grow.
I think to a certain extent they're trying not to like you said, to kind of throw it away. Like, why should I have to throw this away because it's over a certain, you know what I mean? It kind of keeps you in such a box.
Yeah,
it's definitely slowing down production and whatnot. So I encourage it. I mean, of course, high levels of THC, you're always going to have higher levels of CBD, which will allow for various medical applications. So I'm all for it, right? No issue there.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
Thanks for tuning in.
And remember, if you can knock on wood, you can knock on hemp. Yo, we got to have a jingle.
We process hemp seed, stalk, and fiber into a myriad of carbon-negative materials, all to create planet-positive products. Our dependence on unsustainable resources is not slowing down. We need to rely on hemp now more than ever, or we'll all end up like this. In times like these, you should knock on hemp. Visit our website to learn more about what we can do with hemp. Follow us at Knock on Hemp